Hello, my name is Dorotea Kovačević and I work on University of Zagreb, Faculty of Graphic Arts. Today I'm going to run the presentation about packaging design. More precisely, I'm going to talk about the graphic design principles in packaging and how they can make a tea packaging aesthetically pleasing. First of all, why should we bother with the beauty of packaging? Well, many recent studies showed that the aesthetic packaging make product visually appealing. And this can impact people's perception and also evoke positive impressions. In many cases, people tend to choose nice-looking packaging rather than other packaging. One of the most common ways in achieving the aesthetic appearance is applying the graphic design principles. Few of design principles were included in previous studies which investigated the role of visual design in different conditions. For example, in web pages, screen design, even in digital learning games. However, none of the studies investigated the effect of design principles in packaging design. So, our aim was to explore how people perceive the attractiveness of packaging with different levels of graphic design principles. Also, we wanted to investigate the effect of design principles on people's choices. And we wanted to find out if their evaluation is guided by opinion about the importance of beauty in their buying decisions. So here are some specifications of our experiment. There were 36 participants in our study. The stimuli were presented on screen. There was no time limitation. And we used 3 packaging samples. For the purpose of study, we used only the principles which can be easily manipulated on packaging for tea. The graphic design principles were symmetry, which refers to balanced proportions, alignment, lining up the elements to make well-organized content, dominance, enlarging particular element in order to create a strong focus, contrast, different values between dark and light shades, consistency, applying the repetition of visual element, and color harmony, which refers to pleasing color combinations. A special effort was put on creation of packaging samples. Each of design principles was controlled. On the aesthetic packaging, we use all the mentioned principles. We applied a harmonic color palette. The arrangement of elements was based on symmetrical composition. The elements were aligned where possible. We created dominant element by enlarging the illustration. We also used good contrast between text and background. The consistency was achieved by using the same font family. On the partially aesthetic packaging, we kept the symmetrical composition, but application of other principles was changed. We used less harmonic color palette, poorer contrast, and the elements were less aligned. Design didn't include any extremely dominant element. The consistency was degraded by using 4 different fonts. On the non-aesthetic packaging, none of the graphic design principles was applied. The colors were non-harmonic, and the composition was unbalanced. There was no alignment. And no clear dominance. The contrast between text and background was extremely poor. The consistency was even more degraded than in the previous packaging by using 5 different fonts. You can also notice different font styles. One may say that this isn't the ugliest version of the packaging design, and this is probably true, but actually we wanted to use the version which is likely to be created by a designer who uses only his intuition, without using design principles. To summarize, manipulation of principles resulted with 3 different packaging samples: aesthetic, partially aesthetic, and non-aesthetic packaging. Now something about the procedure. Participants' task was to rate the attractiveness of packaging using a 5-point Likert scale. After that, they had a choice task. They were asked to select one of the 3 packaging which they would mostly likely buy in a store. After completing the task, participants answered a question: is the beauty of the packaging important to you when you buy tea? In short, our variables were following. Dependent variables were attractiveness ratings given by participants and frequency of selection of particular packaging sample. Independent variable was the level of design principles applied on packaging. When it comes to results, our study showed that aesthetics influences people's perception. Statistical analysis showed significant differences between the packaging samples for both variables, attractiveness and participants' choices. The aesthetic packaging was the best rated, followed by partially aesthetic and non-aesthetic packaging. Here we can see the ratings given by people who said that the beauty isn't important to them. In comparison with those who claimed that the beauty is important, they were less critical when evaluating, but still, their ratings show the same trend. This suggests that people prefer aesthetic packaging even if they don't find packaging visual appeal as important in making their buying decisions. Similar was in the choice task. When choosing between 3 options, the majority of participants selected the packaging with the highest level of aesthetics, which included all the graphic design principles. Other studies also showed some similar results. Higher evaluation when elements of the packaging were symmetrically composed, and also harmony. Harmony was also found to have an influence on people's perception in the case of marketing materials. This is in line with some packaging studies also. They showed that aesthetic packaging creates an impression of a good quality of product. It seems that the packaging samples used in our study were not an exception. When it comes to our worst-rated packaging design, it is likely that poor contrast in our non-aesthetic sample led to low level of visual appeal, but also the font legibility. As demonstrated in some previous studies, font legibility may play a role in rating the overall aesthetic impressions. To conclude, the results of our study demonstrated how design principles can be useful in the area of packaging. If designer applies graphic design principles intentionally, there is a greater possibility for creating an aesthetical visual design. Consumers perceive a highly aesthetic packaging as attractive and preferable when making buying choices. In line with these results, we can say that the aesthetic value of the packaging is an important part of the successful marketing, even with a low involvement product such as tea. Thank you for watching.